going to be one of those days. Hey, everybody. I'm Erica Heald, and I'm your host for Content Chat. Today, we're going to be talking about community with my friend, former client, and content marketing consultant, Dennis Shao. Dennis, thank you so much for being in the Content Chat hot seat. This is not your first time on Content Chat, but I think it's your first time being in the LinkedIn Livestream Video Edition.
That's right. Thanks for having me, Erica. I'm excited to be here.
My pleasure. And I think this is also your first time coming on here since you've moved to Chicago. And we'll get to that in a minute because it's, I think, a really good part of the topic we're talking about today, which is about, the importance of community in content marketing and really, diving into the fact that as content marketers, there is this great, wonderful, supportive, interesting, thought-provoking community of content marketers out there that you can actually tap into for support, for inspiration, for networking, and all those great things. And I'm sure, every profession has its own, ways that this goes, but there's something really, I think, interesting about the content marketing community. And maybe it's because, by definition, when content marketing is meant to be, relentlessly useful and helpful about, how you can serve others. So like servant leadership kinds of principles are at its core. So maybe that's why we have such an interesting content marketing community. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, as you were saying that, I was like, it was clicking for me. I haven't really thought about that too much, but yeah, content marketing is about serving your audience first. Your product may be secondary, but it's really serving your audience. And I think community building is about serving your community. It's not about advancing your own personal goals per se. That might happen as a byproduct, but it's really about helping other people and having people gather together. So I think it's a great connection for the content marketing community, is that like the whole craft of content marketing is serving a constituency.
And I don't know if you remember, but the topic of the project I did for you way back when was about community and how to, make sure that you had a healthy and engaged community.
Yeah.
Because you and I have both, I think we're those lifelong learner type people who are just, really seeking out community. So I was wondering, when did you first, what was the first marketing or content marketing community that you kind of actively either sought out or actively kind of accidentally became a part of?
So when we worked together, that project was on community. So it's kind of ironic that we were both so passionate about community and we were working on the topic of community. Just a quick nugget. So I was working at a technology company that was building a community management platform. So it was allowing brands to build an online community using our technology. And we were trying to establish ourselves in that market. So I was trying to create thought leadership content to attract community managers and people who were responsible for the business of running the community. And we did a project on creating some content tailored to community managers. I think it might have even been in conjunction with the annual Community Manager Appreciation Day.
It was.
Yeah. And so back then, this was about 10 years ago, the community that I had started to become active in was the Content Marketing World, or CMI, Content Marketing Institute community. I had been a longtime follower on, this was back when Twitter was much different. It was much nicer and there was more of us marketers interacting with each other on Twitter. I think it's changed now. But
the algorithm alone means it's changed, because we used to be able to have Twitter chats where you could follow along a hashtag that would be shown to you in real time.
That's right.
Even if people didn't pay for a blue check.
That's right. And yeah, so I was starting to participate in the weekly, I know there was the content chat that you run, but also the CM World chat that Content Marketing Institute runs. And I would always, at that time, I always wanted to attend Content Marketing World in Cleveland. And unfortunately, the employer I was working for I couldn't get the budget or the approval for the travel expense. So I would always follow like Twitter during the event in Cleveland, but I got to know a lot of people. I think we probably tweeted each other
in
the CM World CMI community back then. And there's so many people that I met via Twitter through in the CMI community through Twitter that I eventually met in person and becomes so special when you build a relationship online that turns to IRL in real life.
And, as a side note, both Dennis and I, we were in a very special photo this year at Content Marketing World. And it was a photo gathering together all of the previous Content Marketing World community champions, because we're both community champions, because this is that kind of a community that, we both participated in and introduced so many other people to, and, did a lot of that community building work because we both saw that there is so much value you get from, from helping others and from being part of these kinds of community. So let's talk maybe a little bit about how being part of, communities, both, CMI and others, kind of how they've affected your career, because,
Sure.
I'm sure that it has for you too.
Yeah. I think I'll just start with an example. So I happen to run a meetup group called the Bay Area Content Marketing Meetup. It was launched in 2015, so we're on our 9th year. And it started just, I was inspired by a mutual friend of ours, Rich Schwerin, who had his own meetup group in Mountain View, California. And I wanted to start something where I lived at the time in San Mateo. And I just went to meetup.com and created this group. And then we started a meetup in 2015, September. I think two other people showed up. So we started with modest beginnings. And it's now since grown. And during the pandemic, in the year 2020, we couldn't meet in person anymore. We used to meet about once a month, got a projector and some pizza, and we had a marketing presentation. And then during the pandemic, we moved online. So we continue to do Zoom-based presentations today. And through that meetup, or I'll call it the community, I've gotten to know so many other marketers, both the presenters, the attendees. We've had some sponsors. So I've gotten to know so many people because they know me as the organizer of the meetup. So the person that brought people together, so whether that's pizza or Zoom, it was a lot of people. And at the time that I launched that community, I was a full-time employee at a company, and they allowed me to use our office space after hours. And then 2018, I went out on my own. I was part of a layoff, and then I decided to become a freelancer and a consultant. And it turns out that all the people that gotten to know me as a result of the community became potential sales referrals or leads to help my business. And so I can say that about 50% of all of my clients over the years I can attribute to a referral, either directly, somebody from the meetup asked me if I could help them, or a referral from someone in the meetup, which I think is pretty amazing. And it was never part of the grand plan, because when I first created that meetup, I was a full-time employee, so I just wanted to get people together. And lo and behold, I think that's one of the things about community building is that you shouldn't really, in my opinion, you don't expect for an immediate benefit to yourself right away, but just know that things will come in the long run. So it's, I think, better just to be focused on helping and bringing people together, but know that there will be benefits to you down the road.
And I think that also is something that then becomes part of kind of the mission around the content you create and the kinds of experiences that you curate for everybody in your community. Yes. Because while, of course, having sponsors can be really helpful and enable you to do more, I think it's also really important to make sure that they provide value, because we've all been in that awkward situation where you're at a conference or you're on a webinar that you're excited about, and then you're like, oh, wait, so this is going to be I'm held captive and listening to basically a demo of a platform I can't even afford. I don't have budget for, which is always kind of a bummer. So I think that's a fantastic reminder.
Right. And as long as you are keeping your audience, or in a community, your members or the community members in mind, that's the key. So there have been cases where I've done things that I originally was hesitant to do. And that is, for instance, sometimes there's sponsors or past sponsors, people that I know in the community that they have a product. In the past, I would never want to have somebody do a product demo to the group, because it could be felt as a sales pitch. But I think if the group is open to it, or people have even asked me, we want to see examples of these tools that are kind of emerging.
Yeah.
then it's more audience focused. So I don't even label it as a sponsor session. I'll just invite someone who might have been a sponsor in the past. You can do a full out a demo because our audience is asking for it. So it's not a sales pitch, but it is a demo. But as long as it's useful to the audience, that's what's important.
I think as long as you're transparent too, it's great because I think a lot of content marketers would be excited to go to something that was basically demo days where they had the ability to be online and to be asking questions and see a demo without the fear of being entered into a relentless sales queue. Because realistically, a lot of times we're doing research for budget we don't have yet. And if you have somebody who, obviously has a quota that they need to meet, which you empathize with, but if you're not in the market yet, too much follow-up or follow-up that's too aggressive can mean that you wouldn't even end up considering that platform in the future. Right. So to me, it's a win-win because the marketers get to understand what's possible and that they can kind of look towards, but without, ending up in an awkward situation. And for the companies, it means that you have a whole bunch more people who wouldn't have otherwise engaged with you, aware of who you are and what you do. So then when inevitably we're on LinkedIn and somebody says, hey, I'm looking for, a platform that does this. Do you guys know of anybody that you are willing to say, hey, I saw this tool and, we're not using it yet, but it looked pretty cool. So totally.
It turns out it's actually a flipped model in a good way. So I know when I invite somebody that has a product to demo to my audience, I know that they're not going to look at everyone that attended and do a sales follow-up because I trust them. But it turns out a lot of the members that did see it and maybe they do have a need, we often see them contact the vendor and ask for a trial or ask for a sales appointment. So it's a great model. It's a flip model where we allow the members to contact the vendor if they're interested.
Yeah, I think that works perfectly.
Yeah.
Before we started the live stream today, we were also talking about kind of another community aspect that frankly has been 100% enabled by LinkedIn and Facebook, which is the kind of, the company alumni community. And for me, I was at Charles Schwab for 10 non-consecutive years. And it was a really large marketing team. And I'm probably connected with, 100 something Schwabies, as we always referred to ourselves as, on LinkedIn. And we just had Rachel Formaro and Jenny Cronin, two of my former Schwabies, on Content Chat a few weeks ago. So the other thing is that through all of this technology we have the ability to not lose touch with those smart people that we enjoyed working with. And so that comes into play because, again, you get those referrals, you hear what's going on, and just, you get to have that sense of community and have that support system. So that way, when you're in, looking for a job mode, looking to hire somebody mode, whatever that is, that you've been able, to cultivate that community and they're there. But of course, all this stuff takes, time, perseverance, and again, having that content marketing approach, providing value, relentlessly providing value, as Pam would say.
I happen to be the creator and group admin of 2 alumni groups from past jobs. So on Facebook, I created a group for one company I work for called ANS. And then on LinkedIn, I created a group for another company I work for called Tech Target. So it's Tech Target Alumni. And you might go months or even a year and there's no activity, but when someone finds something that is unique to our collective experience working at a company, they'll share a link. For instance, at ANS, we were actually acquired by America Online, and we worked for America Online for several years. This was the dial-up internet service provider in the 90s. So I think recently, the person whose voice was behind the You've Got Mail, I think you have to be a certain age to know this reference, but I think that person passed away. So we shared a link about the news of his passing. So it's just a great way to keep in touch of a shared experience that a lot of us, that we've had as a group from our past jobs.
Totally.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about social media communities, and then there's conferences. So Content Marketing World is basically, our content marketing family reunion every year. Marketing Profs, for those of us that specialize in B2B content marketing, that just wrapped up. That was last week in Boston. That is another one of those amazing communities that, while certainly, the in-person conference is a huge, amazing component of it, it's a year-round community. And what I think is really interesting and different about their approach is their entire community is based on content. So, if you're a free member of Marketing Profs, you can access a good amount of content. But if you're actually one of the pro members, which is the paid membership option, that actually unlocks all sorts of skills training, webinars and online conferences and events throughout the year. And even like one-on-one coaching opportunities. I did one of those where people could sign up to get a free, 20-minute content marketing coaching session with me. So there are a lot of these kinds of, conference-based communities that are even more than that have a bigger component. So I think it's definitely worthwhile to ask around, ask your peers, where are they active? Is there a Slack group that they really highly recommend, or is there a Discord that they're a part of? Because there's so many more channels now, but that means that there's such an increased likelihood that you can find those niche communities that are either based in your area, based, on around your industry. So that way you can really find the people that, will make it more enjoyable, which to me is the biggest part of the community aspect, is just to, get great ideas and create cool content with awesome people. Right.
Yeah. That's one of the great things on, you mentioned Content Marketing World. They have a Slack group that allows the community to interact a year round, which is great. I think for me, it's been a good substitute, because historically we would always use the CM World hashtag on Twitter to basically stay together year round. But now that that's not an option anymore, I go into the CM World Slack and keep tabs on the conversations that are happening.
Same.
And then, by the way, at San Diego, at Content Marketing World, there was a great idea that the CMI team had. The lunch tables, they had organized lunch tables with signs where you could sit down at like an AI marketing table. So there's all these different discussion topics, but then they created a few tables for people in the Slack community to actually meet up in person. So that was really neat.
I love that too. When you actually get to meet those longstanding community members that you've never met in person. And that actually happened for me this year in San Diego at Content Marketing World. I was leaving an event and heard my name, and it was Troy Sandige, and I had not met him. And I had been chatting with him online for a decade.
Wow.
So it's amazing that, you can still have those moments where, as long as you actually have an avatar that still looks like you on your social media channels, so that people who haven't met you in person before can actually recognize you at events.
Yes.
Which, I'm not going to name names, but there are some people that we know definitely are using their favorite high school picture or favorite college photo. And if you've never met them before, you have absolutely a 0% chance of having recognized them from their photo.
Right. So, I have to confess, I created a photo from 2013, and I had a lot more hair and I looked a little younger, and I used that for 10 years. So I used it from 2013 to 2023. Then I was like, it's probably not, you could probably tell at this point that it's a younger self. So the current photo I use was taken in 2023. So it's still pretty current.
Yeah. And I think that's important, because even though we may love those old photos of ourselves, there does come a time when it's important to, take a newer snapshot, to get somebody to take a picture of you at an event, whatever. Because, the whole point of the community aspect is you do want to be able to connect with other people. Yeah. So if you have a picture, and this is actually going to be, I'm going to share this as a pet peeve, when it's a community profile for working adults and the person's community photo is their children or their dog. Because while I think those are fantastic elements of yourself, I want to know who you are.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's just always so weird. That said, I do have right now on Facebook, which is a platform I use exclusively for like people I know. I do have a picture of a chinchilla as my profile photo, because people needed cute furry animals, and I had met a chinchilla. And how many people have met chinchillas? They're really adorable. But I am going to change it back to me, so that way people are aware that they're talking to a human.
Right.
So with all of this like background and community for you, you just moved to Chicago after, spending the bulk of your professional career in the Bay Area. So what did you do to find like local, in-person communities that, reflected all the things? Because obviously you're more than just your job. But so I'd love to hear about, what you did when you moved, and then what? How did you find community?
Sure. So this is the power of community right here, which is that, just so quick background, my wife and I, we were empty nesters. So our daughter's off to college a couple of years ago. We decided we wanted to sell our house in the Bay Area and downsize. So we wanted to go from maintaining a house to living in a condo in a big city. So we chose Chicago. And the power of community is that over the years, I had already started connecting with, like, I built the network through the both the community that I manage, like the meetup, but also is a form of personal branding, just to be out there, to be visible online, to connect with people. So I built a lot of connections, some of whom I met in person before, but some that I've only connected with online in Chicago. So when I arrived in Chicago, I already had about 20 people that I might have had like 50 that are in Chicago that I was technically connected to first degree on LinkedIn. But 20 of those 50, I knew well enough that I could do an outreach to them one-on-one and say, I've moved to Chicago. Are you interested in meeting up for coffee? And I got a lot of good success rates. So when I first arrived, I had about 10 plus one-on-one coffee meetups just to chat. And a lot of them were like, why did you move to Chicago from the Bay Area? So I explained the reason. And then with these coffees, everyone was so nice to tell me about their favorite restaurants, what different sites I should check out. And they also would say, there's this marketing happy hour that needs such and such frequency at this place. So I got a list of happy hours to check out. And so even though eventually I wanted to start to plan in-person meetups in Chicago, I did what I called like user testing, which is I spent this summer just going to marketing meetups, which was great to meet other new people in the area that are doing marketing in Chicago, and see some of the people that I already knew. And then I got a feel for how these events were planned. And then I started to build up a list of the new people I met that I could invite if I ever were to do my own. So it's just this is the power of the community to begin with, because anywhere you go, like even if I moved to Indianapolis or Austin or any major city in the US, I would probably have a good chunk of people that I'm already like quote unquote connected with within this marketing community. So I think it's really powerful to be able to tap into the people that you're already familiar with or know.
And for me, I'm an introvert. I would never in a million years walk up to a stranger and introduce myself, although I do try to talk to strangers at conferences and events. But being active in online communities is such an easy, like low impact way to actually meet people. Yes. So I love then that you followed up on all of that, kind of, followed up with those folks. And to me, it's also just so great how people are willing, when you ask for help, they want to help you find your community. So if you meet somebody who is, part of a different content marketing world than you, ask them, where are they spending their time, either in person or online, and get those recommendations. That's so smart.
Thank you.
So for those folks who are listening, who are thinking to themselves, all this sounds great, but how am I supposed to find the stuff in my community? I don't have the luxury of having moved to Chicago and knowing Jenny Dietrich and Andy Crestodina, who literally between the two of them probably know every marketer in Chicago. Right. So, what are some tips for, finding these communities and then actually figuring out how to start providing value and getting to know people?
Well, I think you're asking just like not the scenario where you just moved, but like wherever you happen to be, where do you find your local tribe, either local geographically or just online? I would say start two things primarily. Start with the people you're close to already. You probably have some friends that are in marketing, or even friends that might know other people that are in marketing. So just like ask them if they know about different events. So just start with the people that are closest to you and see if they can give you recommendations on places to connect or people to meet. Like that's another one. Like just ask people, are there marketers in this area that you recommend I meet, and would you be willing to do an introduction? The second thing is just to go to some platforms like meetup.com, eventbrite.com, even you can search on Facebook for events happening in your area. That's how the meetup group that I run has largely grown through the platform itself, meetup.com, of people searching for different things in the Bay Area, and they find the group. So just sign up for an event and go attend. Eventbrite tends to have a lot more events that are with paid tickets. And then once you start to get to the first few things, like the first few events or the first few people, it starts to snowball, if you will, in that they will refer you, or the one event will lead to another. So it'll start to grow, and you'll easily start to uncover fun things to do, both within marketing and for other things like any hobbies that you might have that are outside of marketing.
There must be a delivery happening at my house, because now we're having a dog symphony.
Very cute.
Oh my goodness.
Well, that's a community in itself right there.
Yes, there's a lot of word of mouth happening in the bulldog community right now. Koopa,
that's right.
Why don't you come up here and you can meet. All right. I'm going to distract you because we have your brother and other. So, in my local community, because I moved from San Francisco, where I lived for 24 years, to Sacramento. And I did that in 2019, which is, really great timing for doing a thing. And this little dude I adopted in May of 2019. Let me tell you, if you're looking to have any kind of IRL community building, getting a dog, any dog, is absolutely the best way, especially if you're an introvert, because then you don't have to talk to people. People talk to you. Or, they at least talk to your tiny little dog. And but it makes you a magnet. It makes you the most exciting person in the room. So I highly recommend that.
Yeah, I find that too. So I have a dog here, and you'll get to meet, because I'm on the 46th floor, so I have to take 46 elevator that many flights to walk the dog each day. So I'm undoubtedly meeting other residents who have dogs. So you start to meet other dog owners, and then you can potentially set up doggy play dates. And then when you're out in the public, everyone wants to come pet your dog and talk to you. So I agree, it's an easy way to meet people.
So how do we extrapolate that to like marketing community building? Like, what is the equivalent of walking your dog? Is it commenting on people's posts on LinkedIn, or answering people's questions in Slack?
Yeah, I think online, that's an easy way to be active. When you comment on other people and you're useful. Like there's a whole side topic of conversation about people using AI to do commenting, which is bad.
It's so
but
bad.
If you're, I know, if you are genuine, your real self, and you're being positive, you're thanking people, or you're suggesting other resources, then other people will start to see your comments, especially people you're not connected to. Because if you comment on John's post, and it might show up, your comment might surface to John's connections or Jane's connections. So that's a great way. And then I think in person, you substitute the dog with some well-connected person. So you hang out. So in Chicago, you mentioned Andy Crestodina, Jeannie Dietrich, like you. I'll give you an example, actually. So I think when I first arrived, I did one of those announcement posts on LinkedIn saying, I have moved to Chicago. And Andy Crestodina replied saying, oh, that's so great, Dennis. Are you free this afternoon? Meet me for wine so he was having wine at a happy hour. I was like, that's such a warm welcome. Like, come meet me now, today.
That's very Andy.
That's very Andy. And then then Andy invited me to, he's already planning happy hours. So I went to one of his happy hours, and then he planned this one specific event called AI in Chai. So it's like AI practitioners in Chicago. So I went to that event, and then I met he organized that with a few other people. So then I met them, the co-organizers, and then that was just a traditional happy hour, some cocktails and appetizers. Then they were inspired to do some information, like some presentations on AI practitioners. So they invited me to help them plan and promote their event. And we just had the first formal meetup last week at DePaul University here in Chicago. So it was all like sparked, all of this activity that I was involved in was all sparked from a introduction or a connection via Andy. So it's like, if you get to know the right people, you can get inroads to larger groups of people.
Well, it's also about being vulnerable too. You put it out there that, hey, you moved and you want to meet people. So putting yourself out there and giving people the opportunity to be able to help you. Because a lot of times I think folks, if you're waiting for somebody to come over, out of the blue and say, hey, you should go here and do this thing or meet these folks. That does happen occasionally, but, mostly you got to tell people you're open to it and actually be open to it. Because of course, if you are a classic introvert and you're more likely to, turn down plans than to actually sign up to go, after a while, people stop inviting you. So I think part of it is, signaling that you're open to, to meeting new people, to wanting to expand your network, to making those connections, and then taking them up on it. Like, what if Andy had said, are you free today, to come? And you'd be like, oh gosh, I would prefer to have more notice and, right. And you just didn't go, then all of these things wouldn't have unlocked. So I think that's another really important kind of reminder. But, this sparked something. Let's talk a little bit, though, about how people torpedo themselves when it comes to, when it comes to community. The best example I can think of is those people who ask to connect with you, primarily on LinkedIn. I'm going to call it LinkedIn here, and then turn around and, this used to happen on Twitter too, but now it's primarily LinkedIn. Then they turn around and they either pitch you relentlessly, try to sell you on something, or, and this is the worst case scenario, they start pitching your network. So, you'll notice with me on LinkedIn, you can't see my network, which I had to turn that setting on because I worked at a really large Fortune 500 company where I used to report directly to the CEO. The CEO un-LinkedIn with me after people did that.
Wow.
And that felt bad, because he had been my boss, but he de-linked me because people kept pitching him. And that for me was the wake-up call that while you would hope people would be ethical and be, smart about the way that they behaved, some people just got too excited that they could, be one person away from, a Fortune 500 company and just relentlessly pitched. So I was wondering if you have any other kinds of examples of, things that you see people do that kind of end up, really getting in the way of them being able to be a good community member.
Well, I think the people that are in your community will be able to easily detect what is your main objective in managing the community. So you have to, there could be there is gray area, but it's one or the other. It's either you're running the community for the betterment of the participants, the community members. That's one. That's the one that I like to follow. The second is you're running the community to bring people together in support of some cause that benefits you. It could be you personally, or it could be your business. And you can really tell by the action or the nature of how community events are run, which one it is. Now, again, there's a gray area. It could be like some people might be good at trying to blend the two, even like they're trying to advance their business, but they're also giving some, trying to make it look like they're in your camp, or like their focus is on you. But I'll use an example. I'm not going to give a specific brand, but oftentimes there are branded communities. So a brand forms a community, And there's nothing wrong with that. A branded community is totally fine. But as a participant, you can tell, are they doing this to help me become better at X, or maybe to learn interesting things within the framework of the brand's mission? Or are they looking to drive sales to the brand? So it's pretty clear. You can pretty easily detect which one it is. And it's really, I think, one of my earlier comments was you really have to demonstrate that you are there in service to your community members, and the benefit to you personally or to your business will come down the road in the reverse direction, meaning they'll come seek you out as opposed to you pitching them. So keep the focus on the community members and good things will come back to you.
I totally agree. And I say that as somebody who, I had one of my early clients was People AI, and they had a really solid meetup program. And, it would involve having panel conversations with food and drinks, held at various locations around San Francisco, and bringing together, sales thought leaders to talk about real issues. And I, being their fractional content lead, I would help figure out, all right, for this topic, what are the things that we know based upon conversations that we've had and can analyze through the product, frankly, that are people's big challenges. So what do we know? And then what are the right things to be talking about in order to help people get over those challenges? And so sometimes there would be, a speaker from the company as one of the panelists. Other times it would just be the CEO would be the moderator. He was actually a great moderator. But we would change it up every time to make sure that it never felt like it was a blatant sales pitch, even though obviously it was their meetup and the topics were about sales. Their target audience were, sales organizations, but the meetup content was incredibly useful. And if you didn't want to go to the meetup in person, that's fine. We would have the archive later. We would create derivative content from it. So I think that that's, those are ways that even if it is a branded community and branded community events, there's plenty of latitude to still get that brand awareness and, to be building those relationships with potential customers just by turning up and giving them access to folks that they otherwise wouldn't get to hear speak. Those, practitioners who, are in the trenches doing their same job, sharing like that kind of community content, I think goes a long way in helping build your credibility and to show that, yes, obviously you're supporting this community because it benefits you also, but that you're also about building that community and learning from each other and from being a connection point.
Right. Yeah, I think a good signal is if it's a branded community, so there's a brand bringing people together for an event, whether it's online or offline, to what extent is the product being mentioned? So if it's not mentioned at all, that's generally a good sign that they're bringing you together for the betterment of yourself. If it's subtly mentioned, maybe there's like a URL and some creative, that's also a good sign. But if they're constantly talking about their product, or they even send you an email afterwards saying, thanks for attending, did you know that you can get X, Y, and Z solution from our product? Then they're kind of signaling that they brought you together to sell you on their product.
And that's a bummer. And you don't really need to do that anyway, because, if you're having a branded community event, you can literally, you can have your CEO stand up on stage to welcome everybody and say who they are, from what company, and that you've brought everybody together for XYZ reason. And just by you standing there and saying your company name, people are going to go and look. You don't have to give them the hard pitch.
Right.
You just have to be even if you just do the elevator pitch of, hi, I'm Erica Hield, and I'm the founder at Erica Hield Marketing Consulting, and we help companies use content in order to connect with their ideal customers. Like, if that is the extent of what you're saying to someone, they won't look at that and go, oh, it started with a sales pitch. They'll look at it as, oh, it started with, our host introducing themselves, and then we got down to the content. So it's just about the positioning.
Right. Agreed.
So what are some other tips that you might have if somebody's thinking to themselves, like if they do the looking around and there really isn't anything, any kind of a content community in their area, what are your tips for helping get things off on the right foot?
This might be a little bit more of an advanced approach, but and not everyone's inclined to do this, but maybe think about starting your own. One of the inspirations for me creating that meetup back 9 years ago was I was attending a lot of events so I lived in San Mateo, which is about halfway between San Francisco to the north and San Jose to the south. And I was finding a lot of good events to go to in San Francisco and in San Jose. But San Mateo, where I live, is called the Peninsula. There was never an event I went to that was in the Peninsula. So even though was easy for me to find events in those two cities, there was nothing in my immediate vicinity. And I thought it'd be cool to have an event where it'd be much shorter drive or much shorter travel distance. So the group that's called Bay Area Content Marketing Meetup, the original name was the San Mateo B2B Bloggers Meetup. So it was very specific to the city I lived in, and it was even specific to like the type of B2B blogging. So like it was obviously too niche, but the point is that I saw like there wasn't anything fitting those criteria. So I just created it myself. It was like so easy to do on meetup.com. And lo and behold, it's grown into something much grander, but it all started as an unmet need.
And I think that's a really good point, which is you don't need a bunch of capital to create a group.
Right.
You can use an online platform like Meetup. You could even use LinkedIn or Facebook as your base of operations.
Yep.
If depending upon how important discoverability is, because if you don't have a bunch of people that to invite to be part of this meetup, being on a platform like Meetup or creating like a LinkedIn group are probably going to be better for reaching people you don't know,
right.
Versus Facebook is really if you already have a really strong personal network.
Right.
But most of us have local libraries that have multi-purpose rooms or conference rooms that you can book for an hour.
Yep.
Or like I have a membership in a local co-working space. And as part of that membership, I can reserve a conference room, or, they put on events themselves too. So it's like, there's so many different ways that you can, have either online or in person opportunities to get together with people. It doesn't have to be something where you have a big budget to create a community, because you can certainly do that. You can have a community platform, you can spend as much money as you want, but that's not really what's going to guarantee, that's not going to guarantee success, that you put a bunch of money into it. It's your commitment to building community and putting in the effort, I think, and just taking the time and having the patience.
Right. Yeah, I think if you want to grow and sustain a community, you have to keep at it. Like you can't, if your energy or commitment lessens, then the community will suffer. But just to get things off the ground, there are very low risk things you can do. So for me, the meetup, there was a cost. There's a meetup subscription, but it's pretty low cost. And if it doesn't work out, you can just close down the group. So there's very low risk.
No stakes.
Yeah. And then there's free options too, like Facebook group is free. And then getting together, I also did use our local library a few times for like the slide-based presentations. But one trick that I learned for getting together for like happy hour is there were some times where I wanted to secure a space and the place said, we need a commitment of like, we need your credit card and you need to commit to like, I don't know, $500 minimum, which was because I do it volunteer basis, I don't really have budget to do that. So I would just find places and say, like for the Bay Area, we picked an outdoor space, the Fieldwork Brewing in San Mateo, which is a large outdoor space where they serve beer and food. And that was a place where they said, if you want to secure a spot, you have to give us your credit card. So I just said, let's just meet here. And there's enough space there that I didn't have to put any commitment down, but we just all gathered we put a note to gather at a certain spot. So we were able just to use, and I've done one here in Chicago where I just picked a bar and we met around the bar, but I didn't have to. And then people paid for their own drinks, so there was really no capital commitment, if you will, to pull a whole event off.
That's an excellent event planning hack.
Yes.
I'd also say the other thing you can do is if you find a place that you think would be a good candidate for it, you can ask them what their least busy time and day of the week are.
Yeah.
And say, hey, cool, I'd love to hold my meetup, here at that time. Could you waive your normal policies, if, in order for us to be able to like publicize that?
Yeah.
And, places will sometimes agree to that because there is an upside for them. The upside being they would otherwise be pretty darn bored.
Right. That's a great idea.
I love it. Here in Sacramento, of course, we have so many places with outdoor spaces that, you 100% can easily find places to meet up with folks year round. So we're pretty spoiled.
That's good.
Well, Dennis, before I let you go, are there any other kind of like tips or key pieces of advice that you want to give folks who are either looking to create their own community or, find their happy place in the content marketing community?
Sure. This is going to be less of a tactical tip and more of a bigger picture thing to think about, which is, I think some of you out there might be thinking, they might be an introvert like you, Erica, or they might not just have a natural inclination to connect with others. But I'm on the back half of my career. I'm starting to think about retirement on the horizon. And I'm reading a lot lately about, for instance, the current U.S. Surgeon General has put out a big warning about the loneliness epidemic. I think Americans are lonelier than ever because a lot of us, like those that might live by themselves, may not be interacting with people in person, and people are becoming lonely. And I think community is a great way to get out there and be part of different communities is a great way for your mental well-being. And I think as we head into the later phases of our lives as we age, there is studies that say that a good social fabric is important for healthy aging. So if you try to age by yourself and you never interact, you're not part of a community, I think your well-being may suffer. So this is really big picture thinking of getting out there and being part of communities, even if you might be inclined not to, for your own well-being.
And, I would just, cap that with the latest issue of HBR, Harvard Business Review, has a cover story on, the loneliness epidemic and the fact that, people are still lonely at work. Yeah. So even with all these companies doing these return to work mandates, they're not actually, they all have a bunch of reasons that they say they wanted to do it, but they're still not facilitating people truly connecting or having collaborative work. Right. So they're forcing people back into the office and back into the cubes, but it's still not an actual kind of community feeling, which is allegedly the entire purpose of having people work together in the same place. So some food for thought there too.
Excellent.
So Dennis, for folks, if they want to hear more from you on anything content marketing related or connect with you in Chicago, where are the best places that they can find you online? We know it's not an X.
I will give two primary places. One is LinkedIn. You can look me up by name. If you wouldn't mind, if you would like to connect, just mention that you saw me on Content Chat, because I do get random invitations. So if you say you saw me on Content Chat, I will gladly accept. And the second place you can check out my website, it's attention-retention.com. That's the website for my business.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for coming here today and talking about one of our shared favorite topics, because I think now more than ever, building community, especially amongst content marketers who all love what we do, I think it's the best way that we can all, be happier at work and, just do a better job of having creating content that connects with others. So thank you so much for being my guest. And everybody else, there's not going to be a content chat next week because just about everybody I know is taking the entire week off for Thanksgiving. Because thanks to the advent of year-round school and such, my partner, he is off for the whole week because his schools are closed. I'm like, what? A whole week for Thanksgiving? So jelly. So with that in mind, we're not going to be here again until December. So until next time, everybody, thanks for joining. Catch you later. Bye, guys.